Hello and welcome to Murder with Friends, the show where two friends get together and talk about the darker sides of history. I'm your host, Grace Baldridge, and joining me today is my friend and someone very familiar to the TYT network, Jayar Jackson. Jayar, welcome to Murder with Friends.
I've been
We're
trying.
finally
I
doing
love
this.
Yes, you know why? Because it starts as such a morbid thing. I was wondering when we started this, and you were doing the whole thing. I was like, well, what exactly is this going to be? I mean, is it going to be sad? Is it going to be dark? Or are we going to have some kind of fun with it, and then therefore people are going to be mad at you for having fun with such a dark?
A lot of people that don't see the show, whenever there's a promo that airs on the main show, they will say, how can you make light of this dark stuff? Like, why is it a funny show? Because I do comedy. And to those people, I would just say you should probably watch the show before you make a dumb comment about it. But I'm so excited to have you on, and I wanna get sort of your take. What is your interest in true crime? Because you approached me. I didn't know that you'd be interested in doing the show, and you said I'd love to come on. So what's your interest in true crime and sort of the darker sides of history?
Oddly, most shows that I'm coming on, I have to beg to get on. And everyone says, I didn't think you had any interest in anything else that I'm doing.
I thought you were too good for me, honestly.
Well, it's because I do all the political stuff, right? So I think that's the basis why people think that, but actually you need outlets. So that leads to your question, or at least the answer to your question is, you know, people go home and watch reality TV and escape from their accountant jobs and their lawyer jobs and all that stuff. I listen to politicians all day, watch damn near C-SPAN and congressional hearings, and then afterwards, you may want to watch stupid TV, but I don't like watching dramas and like Law and Order type of shows and all those. I like to watch the real stuff. So, I mean, there's the old shows now, but like the First 48, Forensic Files, and I've seen every episode of the Forensic Files, but I will watch them again when it comes on. I was like, I remember how this guy got caught. I remember how the lady actually died when they thought it was something else, but I'm gonna watch it again.
So on today's show, we're gonna be talking about the Beltway Snipers. And we've decided that we're gonna sort of cover this story, this case, in a way that isn't so normal than how we usually do these episodes. Usually, I would introduce a case and we're gonna begin with someone's childhood or their background and then lead you into how they became a murderer, or like what was the case, how did we get to this dark side of history. But today, I think that what's so interesting about the case of the Beltway Snipers is that they weren't at all who people thought they would be. So to bring you guys along with us on that journey, we're gonna start by saying exactly how the events unfolded, what investigators knew happened, and then in parts 2 and 3, we will slowly reveal who these killers ended up being. But with that being said, we're talking about 2002, Maryland, Virginia, the Washington, D.C. area. They are on edge because overnight, the Montgomery County area sees a 25% increase in their homicide rate. Within October 2002, in total, 17 people were shot and killed, another 10 were injured by the Beltway Snipers. And with that being said, let's go to our first clip, just teasing what we're going to be talking about today.
A man has been killed in front of me.
In the autumn of 2002, a ruthless killer stalked the suburbs of Washington, D.C.
He only needed a split second and he could take them out.
People were murdered at random.
White people, black people, young, old, children.
And then the killer vanished without a trace.
How do you find a ghost?
Millions lived in fear.
I felt like the water was over my head.
The sniper's high-powered rifles sent shockwaves across the country.
People like this exist in our world.
One of the largest manhunts in American history spread from coast to coast. There were many false leads, but eventually the murderer became careless, and the police were able to apprehend a pair of deranged killers.
The story really reaches its climax in October of 2002, but in order to tell the Beltway story, we need to go back way further. So February 2002, there are some preliminary crimes that begin in Washington state, and they are, this team of killers are sort of going on a crime spree on their way to Washington, D.C. So let's talk a little bit about that. What can you explain to our viewers?
Well, I mean, I feel like one of those things that turns into, with certain kinds of mentalities, it happened later, I'm sure we'll get to, but they try to find the mentality of these type of killers, and it almost feels like the beginnings of that kind of trigger a need to do more. Of course, there's reaches of like the eventual killer's kids, his ex-wife, all play into it, but I guess when you first start with smaller crimes or different kinds of crimes, they look for a pattern, because then they want to see, are these robbery-based? Are they revenge-based? Are there something where someone got fired from a job? Things like that. They're looking for a motivation. And I guess in a way to find a way around it, you just kind of keep changing the way that you do it. So it starts with minor things, but then you go on to revenge, but then making it random so there's never a fresh trail.
Yeah, beginning in February, it sort of seems like it's a trial and error. They're sort of learning how to get away with these crimes. And it's so difficult for authorities to find a link between these crimes because they're crossing state lines. All these jurisdictions are getting confused. A lot of it looks really random. So it's, they're holding up a liquor store, they're stealing money, they're just trying to get across from Washington State. But very pointedly, they are trying to get to the Washington, D.C. area. So they have an end point to this journey.
And this is something I always love. I watch a lot of these, and I always try and look for the time frame, because obviously we're living in 2017, and again, I watch all those other types of shows, and I always want to look at what year this stuff happened. This is 2002.
Yeah.
So everything feels like it's as advanced as we're in now. But you think about it, 2000, even 7, 8 was nowhere near as advanced to the level of technology we have and tracking and all that stuff that people just have in their hands. So in 2002, cell phones were not like everyone generally had them, but they didn't have the capabilities that everyone has.
Well, it was also...
So in tracking someone, it's nearly impossible across state lines like that.
Yeah,
quickly.
That's a great point. And then also, it's very soon after 9/11, and we saw all this surveillance and government oversight where we would have more cameras and more ways to track people following 9/11. But this was so soon after 9/11 that we didn't really have that in place. So it's a good thing to remember that this is 2002. They were able to move pretty freely. And let's go to a clip just sort of talking about their trek from Washington State to Washington, D.C.
Mohammed and Mabo leave Tacoma and make their way cross country.
We visit friends and family, we stay in diners, we sleep in motels, whatever the situation calls for.
It's believed Malvo and Mohammed kill at least 7 people in Arizona, Texas, Louisiana, and Alabama on their way to D.C.
They would find somebody that would be carrying money, small store owners. They would observe their routines, and then they would attack them basically and rob them.
Him having me kill people, then he would watch me do it, and to go back to me to evaluate what I did wrong, what I need to change, and we do it over again.
No one realizes these seemingly random killings are connected.
They are connected, and then they do make their way to Washington, D.C. in the beginning of October. And once they get to the Washington, D.C. area, Montgomery County, terror is absolutely unleashed in Washington, D.C. in, I think, in an unprecedented way. There are 5 dead within about 24 hours, and this happens October 2nd, October 3rd, and October 4th. They are able to just move freely, and it's all so random. They have outfitted their car, but a lot of misinformation from these first shootings was going around. Some people were saying that it was a white van. A lot of people said that there was a sketchy white male in the area, and we'll get into why that is wrong when we get into the profile.
That's what our mindset went to because of these types of things. There's profiles for these things. It was happening in store parking lots, random community. I think it was Montgomery County.
Gas stations,
Michael's craft stores, parking lots. And then one of the women on, I think maybe even still the first day, who was shot. One of the eyewitnesses said this woman killed herself because it was from such a random view that he's like, no one walked up to her and killed her. She must have pulled some kind of weapon out and killed herself. So just trying to track those types of things also, of course, leads trails very cool. There was one thing I did notice, and I had to write this down. A lot of the calls that are recorded from witnesses who tried to call 911 as each of these happened, and the 911 operators, in general, I heard 2 or 3 of them very upset immediately. Like this woman witnessed a taxi driver, again on the first day, get shot and lean up against her van and bleed everywhere. And she's obviously hysterical.
Yeah.
And he said, ma'am, quiet, calm down, listen to me. This is the dispatcher, listen to me. I was like, man, calm down. You're doing an emergency job, but someone might see something very fucked up. So I don't know if I can say that.
You can.
But someone might see something that bad, and you have to understand where they're coming from. He's yelling at her as if she's the problem here.
Well, in defense of that dispatcher, what is unique about the Beltway snipings, the shootings, the snipers, is that it was totally something that no one was trained for. Because usually, if you're a dispatcher, you're trained to handle a shooting, you're trained to handle an emergency situation. But these calls were coming in at random almost all day. You know, it started at like 8 a.m. in the morning around breakfast time, and then it was just going throughout the day. People were being shot at gas stations, at supermarkets. The city thought that they were potentially under attack. What was going on here? And no one knew. And they weren't sure if it was maybe just a coincidence, if it was happenstance that all these people were being sniped from long distance. But there was a lot of misinformation that was going around. But just to give you a better idea, let's go to a clip right now that outlines the timeline of these first days of shootings in D.C.
Around breakfast time on October the 3rd, 2002, 2 men were shot dead in the normally peaceful suburbs just north of Washington, D.C. Each of them had been hit by a single bullet from a high-powered rifle. A few minutes later, the killer struck again. Sarah Ramos had been waiting for a ride outside a senior housing complex called Leisure World. She had moved to the U.S. from El Salvador in Central America. There she'd been a law student, but in the States, she made ends meet by cleaning houses.
Fire an ambulance.
Yes, I need the ambulance, please.
Eyewitness accounts only added to the confusion.
A girl just shot herself. She just shot herself.
We got a possible 1056 at Leisure Wood. Please advise.
It was the 3rd brutal murder in less than an hour.
So think about that. We see the phone call that you were referencing where a guy says, I think she shot herself. But this was within an hour, people were being gunned down. There was just mass hysteria going on, and no one knew exactly where they were going next.
And again, think about how slowly the news of this is spreading. You have to listen to it on the radio or on television. I mean, think about it now. Someone probably would have gotten a video of that on their cell phone if it was these types of times. So, or then as soon as you hear anything happen, you go to Twitter, you go to Facebook.
I was just thinking of Twitter. If this were happening in today's age, I think it would have been trending. People would have been on the lookout. People would have known a lot sooner. Whereas, you know, the school systems, I will say this, the DC investigators, the chief of police for Montgomery County, they reacted very smoothly, given that they had no idea what hit them. You know, that this just really came out of nowhere. They did their very best, but it still wasn't able to spread as quickly as it would today. We wouldn't be able to reach, because kids didn't really have cell phones as much as they do now. I know I don't know, does your son have a cell phone? I know my youngest cousins.
Deactivated one, like just once he can play some games on, just to keep him content.
But if you needed to reach him, would you be able to?
No, still not. Like, because now you're grappling with the idea of, are you being too much of a new age parent by giving your young kid a phone that he can do random things with, and maybe he's not supposed to have at school and all that stuff. So you toe the line now. You want to have the communication, but you also don't want to give him free reign of a phone. Like, are you crazy? Give this 5-year-old a phone? No way.
I've heard he was 5. I thought he was like 8 or 9. He's a big kid. All right, so then October 7th, this is where things start to take a little bit of a twist. October 7th, there is a clue left in the form of a tarot card, the death tarot card, at the scene of one of the shootings. This was a shooting of a 13-year-old boy. Fortunately, he did survive and he was able to testify at the later trial. But I think this is really where we see the snipers take a turn, because before it was adults. They didn't discriminate between race, age, anything. But now this is a 13-year-old kid. This is where they become, for me, just absolute monsters, unconscionable. Because whatever motive that we will get into, however they want to justify it, you can't justify the shooting of an innocent 13-year-old boy.
Headed to school.
And then leaving the tarot card is where we really get into sort of the psychosis of what is going on here. What is the motive? And the tarot card says, "Call me God." And sometimes that was misreported in some news articles. They said, "My name is God," or whatever. It also says, "Dear Mr. Policeman," and "Call me God." So this is sort of the a grandiose sense of purpose that we see from the killers
Which
now.
again, we start to see, so again, there's 2002, I'm gonna say it 15 times.
What year?
2000.
It's 1997.
October. But you know what, there's movies like, I remember this, because as soon as when this was going down, I wasn't paying close attention, I was still in college. But movies like Seven, Bone Collector, all those things that were coming out in the late 90s. And then, so it's those types of movies that where someone's on a killing spree and they decide to go then finally give some clues to the cops, like, haha, or put some kind of weird balloon out with a sketch on it. So he uses a tarot card. So people have to they start to like not joke with the police, but taunt them and be like, "You can never catch me." And it's one of the few times where I feel like our entertainment culture, movies and TV, start giving people that are unhinged ideas. They're like, I can do that in real life.
Mm-hmm.
I can have control of a gun. I know how to use a long-range rifle. I know how to use all these things. And I can do some joking things with the police and become infamous.
I also think it's, to an extent, I'm getting away with this. Look at how many people I was able to kill and get away with it. And we're not even considering the journey to get to Washington, D.C., where he had already gotten away with so many other murders, where they had already gotten away with so many other murders. There's sort of this elevated sense of self and sense of purpose. Like, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing because I'm so good at it. But it is when they start leaving these clues that the manhunt really begins for the Beltway Snipers. And when we come back, we're going to tell you about the clues and the careless mistakes they made that led to their capture. We'll see you then.